Good morning. Good morning, friends. This is Biniam on the Checkin In podcast. Welcome back for today's episodes. Today is episode triple 11. No, let's try it again. 111. And in the words of Bilbo Baggins, it would also be called my 111st verse. No, 111st episode. My goodness. You can tell it's early in the morning here. Welcome, and I'm glad to have you join in today's episode. It has been some time since I was last on here. Yesterday, I had enjoyed a fantastic sleep, and so I said, no podcast today. So here we are today, back again, and happy to join you on this Thursday, December the 9th, I believe it is today. Yeah, wow. Time continues to march on. But this is a podcast where we like to start our day by doing some self reflection considerations. And this is for the purpose of growing together, growing and considering what does this look like for us to continue being on this journey that enables us to be aware. So, being aware is one of the first pillars of this podcast that we love to focus on. One of the first ones because we say, hey, when we are aware of how we're growing over time, this is a much better dynamic for us, a much better dynamic in which we're able to say, hey, here is how I'm getting to know me, especially me in the process of change over time. I happen to believe after 4 decades that I will never arrive per se an at a level where I'm like, hey, there's nothing more to be done on me. I've sort of reached this zenith of completeness, this space of having learned everything there is to know, and there's no more that needs to be done. I think we are collectively in this process in life of discovery, of growth, of new awareness. And I don't think often we are giving time to what that looks like as we grow over time. And so, what does that look like? There's a couple other pillars, including kindness and happiness, that we'd love to focus on. But let's dive into today's podcast because I have the way I worded today's question, it is, I think it's something that we can all relate to. And I want us to consider. Here's how the question today goes. How often do you pursue presenting perfection? There's a lot of P words there. Instead of embracing personal growth. Again, let me read the question today. How often do you pursue presenting perfection instead of embracing personal growth? That's the question we're considering today. Let's dive into it and see how we can serve ourselves well in considering this question. Give me a sec while I blow my nose. Excuse me. So, how often do we pursue presenting perfection instead of embracing personal growth? This is an important one for me because one of the big lessons I've learned over the years, one of the big lessons I've learned is how to embrace the fact that I am growing over time incrementally and that change does not happen on a snap. As I grew up, one of the things I was noticing was how as I became aware of areas and challenges in my life that I need to address, I want it to be fixed right now. That's the word I used. How can I fix myself? Is kind of like how I thought through this. And as I was thinking about how do I fix myself, there was this. It was almost like a. It was almost like a. How can I say? It was a desire that people, when they saw me, would see competence. And when people saw me, they'd be like, "Okay, this person's well put together. They figured out a lot of stuff. You should start an ASMR channel. Your voice is so relaxing." Says Dallas. Thank you. I've heard that a few times. Dallas, thank you for the encouragement. Keep coming up with this podcast. I'd love to serve you in some way with this voice and the things that we talk about, which I feel are very important. But thank you. I hear your encouragement. It's not off the table. I just need time to figure out how to facilitate serving you guys that way. So yes, so once upon a time, I would be thinking in terms of, okay, I've got this. Let me give you one of my first reflections that I was like coming to an awareness of. I was becoming aware that I had an anger problem in my preteens into my teen years. I was a very angry young boy then, and Wyatt says, Biniam, been a while, pal. Glad to see you started the podcast. You used to talk about, yay, 111th podcast, my friends. So I'm super thrilled and grateful for this season that I'm currently in. So thanks. Yeah, I do hear your encouragement, and I'm going to keep on pushing on. So again, the one of my first challenges that I came aware of in my personal life as a preteen, as a teen, was how I had this anger problem. I was a really angry individual. So many circumstances in my life that sort of played into me just having this frustration, anger that I wanted to express. A lot of people don't believe that I could have been such an individual that I was angry. But you see, one of the things I point out to them is the reason they can't believe it is because there's been such a transformative event that took place in my life, and that did not happen in a snap of a moment. When I first realized way back then, oh man, I've got an issue here. I am very violent and angry, and I need to get this sorted out. I wanted to get fixed in the moment, and that's the word I used again because I didn't want to be broken. I didn't want to seem like I was not well put together. I didn't want to be judged by those around me. And so my desire was, how can I fix this problem right now so I don't have to struggle with this going forward? The reality was, it took years. It took years and small changes over time for me to learn new ways of engaging and dealing with my frustrations and how all that could look like. It took me a long time to be able to get to this point whereby I was able to see some lasting change that makes me me today. That's one example, for instance. And in those seasons, I remember what was driving me. I was like, I need to pursue presenting perfection. I need to present on the outside that I am, complete, that there's nothing wrong with me, and that people could say, ooh, wow, he is so well put together. And that's what people did for the most part. Here's how that first struggle came to be. I was still considered one of the nicest people had met along their way whenever I met them outside. And everyone was raving, saying, Benjamin is the nicest guy ever. At home, however, I could be more myself, and that's where I let my frustrations go. And my brothers would experience the brunt of it whenever I lost my cool, my frustration, or like, and I'd beat them up, and it was terrible. And one day, my mom, while she was pleading with me to stop fighting my brothers and expressing my anger, she said, Piniam, who are you really? Like, on the outside of the house, everyone says you're this angel, but here at home, you're this devil. Who are you? I can't tell. And if there's one thing I did not want to be, I knew back then, I did not want to be a two-face, right? Furry Walls says, my parents changed my name when I was 7, and I haven't got the same. I haven't got the same since. Sounds like I'm not sure how to understand your comments. If that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not sure if you're saying that you haven't gotten used to your new name since, or yeah, give me some more clarification if you would, Furry. So back to the point. I was when my mom challenged me with that observation. I haven't been the same since. I see. Sorry, man. I'm not sure. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because sometimes not being the same is a good thing. For me, it's a good thing that I'm not the same person I was way back then, right? But yeah, can you give me some clarification of if you're struggling with that or not? And then I'll know how to encourage you along the way there. So when my mom made that observation in my life, that was a point when I was like, I don't want to be two-faced. I want my family to be able to give the same report as people outside. I want there to be a consistency on the inside of Pinium and on the outside. And so that's when I started acknowledging first and saying, all right, I see I got a problem. That was a really important first place for me to say, I see it, there it is. I can understand that there's a struggle and I need to face. And then there was the desire to change. The desire to change followed through by way of me saying, okay, what does it look like for me to move forward now and address these difficult challenges in front of me? That was a tough thing because I desired change right away, but I had to settle for small incremental changes over time. How often, the question we're asking today, for those of you coming in, how often do you pursue presenting perfection instead of embracing personal growth? I was playing into the cultural narrative then that said, hey, don't uh, like have your life figured out in a way where it looks like you've got nothing wrong. And so many of us back then and even today, so many of us, we're so gifted at looking good before we leave the doors after this podcast, and then we heading off to work here. And as I head off into work, check me out. I have my shirt on. I'm not wearing my bow ties quite yet. I will be getting my bow ties back on at my new job. I just don't want to, kind of scare them and say, who is this guy like coming in and wearing bow ties as a delivery person? But that's the plan still. But I make sure I look presentable, right? And as I look presentable, I want to also um, I want to engage in a way that imbibes confidence in those that I get to serve and work alongside. So that's kind of my design. But who of us does not do the same thing, right? We're all sort of in this zone where we don't want to seem like we lack competence when we get out there. So along those lines, change, personal growth, isn't necessarily featured as high in the priority list as looking good, even though we may not be feeling good, even though we may not be doing well. Looking good and seeming like we have everything together is kind of the mandate that I shouldn't say we all, most of us are listening to and trying to follow through on. Can you guys relate with me? Are you guys on the same page too? Because that was what my existence was for such a long time. And that's what my observation has been of people in general. And along those lines, what tends to happen is as we pursue presenting perfection, we feel far more isolated. What do I mean by that? When I say we feel far more isolated because we are presenting perfection, is because we are presenting and engaging and living and navigating through life in such a way that doesn't help us connect with others. Why is that? Because, my dear friends, as human beings, as fellow human beings, we were never meant to be perfect. Listen again. We were never meant to be perfect. We were never meant to live life flawlessly. That wasn't the way we were designed. From the get go, we are a process of change and of learning. Consider the baby that's born and having to go through this life. There is tremendous investment of energy and time into this new individual from those around it in this environment, from parents to teachers to friends to relatives, so many that are going to have to extend their influence to help this individual become someone who is going to be a functioning member in that community. And then it still keeps going. I'm a 40-plus-year-old man and I'm still being influenced by my surrounding environment. We were never meant to live this life on our own and have it all figured out. And yet, that is how we continue to live our lives and navigate through the world. And I'm saying it shouldn't be so. It's not realistic. And it's not realistic for us to, in a snap of a finger, try to be perfect, even though that is what we think is the most important thing, so that we can look like we know what we're talking about, or so that we can get affirmation and credibility from those in our community. That wasn't what we were designed for. And when we strike out in life trying to present perfection, instead of just fumbling our way forward, we feel far more isolated because people cannot relate to us. Everyone knows it's not possible to be, sorry, I shouldn't say everyone. Most of us know that it's not possible to be perfect, to be a perfect human being. I don't think there's a perfect human being out there. And so when we try to present perfection, we feel more isolated because we can't relate to one another at the very heart of it, right? And so we almost want to look like we're competent at the expense of feeling connected with others in the way that we're growing together and fumbling our way forward together, which is a really important part. The isolation comes because people are like, wow, great for you. You are really good at presenting perfection. And they might even buy it. And yet, they're far more likely not going to connect with you at that level that says, can I tell you how I'm kind of struggling? Because They don't see that same struggle in you. I've learned in my 4+ decades that the best way to make really close connections is by learning to be vulnerable in appropriate ways. I've learned that the best way to feel not alone is by relating to others at their very point of messiness, at their very point of challenges, and then being able to share my own experiences where I can relate as well. I know what it's like, for example, to try presenting perfection because I've done that for a very long time. I've done it really well, to the fact that most people bought my story, just like they are probably buying your story of presenting perfection, and yet you know that even though you look flawlessly leaving the home, even though you act like you have everything together, even though you present as someone who is completely competent as you navigate your world, internally you're really falling apart. Internally you're saying, is there someone that can actually know the real me? I know that what I'm presenting isn't the truth, but people are buying it, and so I don't feel like I can find that place where I can feel safe to actually let this guard down. It's like a guard that we put up when we present perfection. And as a result, we just don't have those spaces in life to be able to say, okay, I can now be the real me, and someone else can know the real me and be okay with the real me. That's what I'm talking about. How often, my dear friend, do you pursue presenting perfection instead of embracing personal growth? You've got options. One of the things I love savoring and reflecting on is that in this life that you and I live, in this zone that we're in, when you have options, you have a bit of breathing space. In the absence of options, it can be a super difficult thing to settle for the only option you have. It's very stifling. It's like, oh man, I wish I had more variety here to be able to consider what my choices are and contrast them and choose the best way forward. Here's the choices I'm laying before you today. You can continue on your present path where you are able to walk out there and you can put on this act that everything's going well. How you doing? Great, never been better, and you look fantastic in the way you're dressed, or you're feeling really accomplished in the way that you're able to act like everything's together. There's that sense of confidence that's like a false confidence, and that's been like your experience, and you're doing that because you feel compelled that this is survival for you. If anyone were ever to know your weakness, you would be done for, right? And so you keep on wanting to push this story or narrative forward. And in the meantime, you're feeling super alone internally, super isolated, super like unique in the sense that no one knows your real struggle and you don't know if they could handle it. The option number two that I wanted to present to you is coming to reflect that as a human being, that is an unrealistic ideal to try and maintain. And that the best alternative is probably to become aware, that first pillar of this podcast, becoming aware of who you are as a human being that's really trying to figure it out, just like every other 7, 8 billion people in the world are trying to do. That you are just the same human being like anyone else who is trying the best they can to figure out how do I try to make it through this life when I don't have all the answers, when there's so much that's out of my control, when there is so much that I don't understand about this world, when there's so much that baffles me about myself, That's the other option, which I believe is far more realistic and far more beneficial to reflect on and to act on. How can you instead pursue your personal growth over trying to appear perfect? Hello, Joseph. Nice to see you. You seem a little down today. Oh, I'm just talking about something that's really sobering. I'm actually doing very well. Thank you for asking, Joseph. So, what does that look like for you when you are living your life? Can I tell you this is the one chance you get for some of you who believe in reincarnation. This is your chance, your moments today. This is like your life right now to commit to. Infamous TikToker. It is currently 5:30 ish over here in the morning. What does that look like for you? Can't have you being down, man. Thank you, Jason, Joseph. That's very kind of you. I want to give you hope this morning. I want to give you hope and encouragement. It is worthwhile to experience life in this zone, in this lane, in this trajectory where you can experience the richness of it by being honest with yourself, by being frank with yourself and saying, hey, I'm not made to be perfect. So how can I stop trying to present perfection? How can I stop trying to pursue perfection or the image of perfection? How can I find those people in my life that I can say, I would like to take this connection, this friendship, this relationship to the next level by becoming honest with you. Can we sit down and can I share with you some of those? Um, can I show you some of those areas that I struggle with as you feel comfortable? Because here's the thing, you need to have trust there too, right? You need to have trust in this individual that they're going to be able to hold that sacred space, if you will, for hearing your story, hearing your challenges, that they're a safe person that isn't going to go and sort of like um, ruin your confidence by telling others how you're processing. But my encouragement this morning would be, friends, let's just stop this charade of trying to present perfection. How can we instead focus in another lane on um, being who we truly are and trying to figure this way forward in a way that gives us that space and that permission to say, I don't have to have it all together. I know I don't. And I'm so grateful for that. Joseph, you asked, I had a question. What is your thoughts on cannabis? Do you think it's a good vent or cure? I think perception on cannabis has been shifting over time, just like so many other things. And I don't think there's anything wrong with indulging in cannabis from what I have access to. I know doctors usually prescribe it for some of their patients by way of pain management, and others will take it to feel relaxed and creative, and a variety of reasons why people will do it, right? So for my part, I don't think I have anything against it. I know I don't like it, me personally, and so, but that's me, and I can choose that this isn't something that I'm interested in. But I think this is where you look at the best information you have, and then consider why you're doing it and the intention or the strategy for how you're going to implement it in your life. That's my thoughts on it. Again, friends, the question I was asking was, how often do you pursue presenting perfection instead of embracing personal growth? Really felt this question important because in my context, I can relate with how long of a season, really decades in my life, I have been working hard to present perfection, trying to look like I was well put together to those around me in my world, instead of focusing on the other option of saying, what does personal growth for me look like? And now I'm in a zone where I'm like, hey, in reality, every one of us, I think, is a process of change over time. We will never be perfect, I think. That's one of my, yeah, I think I have pretty good, solid confidence in saying that we aren't made to be perfect. Friends, you aren't made to be perfect. Neither am I. And if we can acknowledge that that is so, how can we make space and permission for each other to be human? One of the ways that I engage whenever I meet people is how can I make space for them that they're going to mess up along the way, and I'm going to take them as part of that. Ollie, good morning, my friend. A lot to be honest. Yes, what does that look like for us to be able to say to ourselves first and foremost? And this is a kindness piece. I'm going to be kind to myself by enabling myself not to have to like figure out how to be perfect in my world today, but how to embrace, hey, I'm learning as I go, and that is totally okay. In fact, that's where we ought to be. That's why this podcast exists, is because I want to create a space where I can reflect personally and say, in my own personal context, Here's how I am pursuing change over time. Here's how I'm strategically acknowledging that I am a process of growth. Where are those areas that I want to be growing presently? And how can I be aware of them so that I can take the opportunity to see transition in the way I feel and think and believe and engage over time? That's really critical and important for me personally. And as I share my experience with you, I would love to say, wouldn't you join me on this path? I'm encouraging and inviting you along this path because I find tremendous benefit here. I'm talking about these ideas because these have been what I found work for me. I love expressing and sharing them with you because in this marketplace of ideas where we get to exchange ideas, I would love to see your good as well too. I'd love to hear about how you're able to move forward in a way that you're saying, this is really helpful, this is really clarifying. Once upon a time, I wished I had a voice like this, the one I'm giving you today, that talked about these ideas or that I could have access to in asking questions. And that's why I super appreciate you guys giving your time, considering these ideas, because my intention in sharing these ideas is that you too would be able to see growth over time. You too would be able to see something beautiful in your forecast, and that you would have hope, which is a beautiful thing. Friends, have a great Thursday. I will see you tomorrow for our last episode of the week. Bye for now.